Villains often play a huge part in some narratives. After all, if you want a classic hero's journey, it becomes a lot easier to write if you have an antagonist that the hero can fight. Sometimes the villain is just a classic mustache-twirling, evil guy that just wants to destroy or conquer the world for basically no reason. But sometimes, villains can be a lot more than that. I think that the gaming medium has produced some of the most interesting villains that are out there right now. And today, I wanted to take a look at some of them. Sephiroth is truly such a menacing villain in the original Final Fantasy VII. You don't really meet him until you're deep into the game, and when you do, the first thing that he does, that you see him do at least, is burn down Cloud's entire village. Before that, you only really hear people talk about him. Sephiroth becomes a menacing figure because he's left up to your imagination. Even though he doesn't have any huge ambitions, except, destroying the world by letting a meteor fall on it, I still think Sephiroth deserves to stand among some other great villains, for the build-up alone. It also really helps that he's one of the first villains in gaming to kill the main love interest of the game, which only adds to his menacing aura. Sadly, I think the remake does butcher him a little bit by overusing him and trying to shove him into every scene for some reason. I do think that makes Cloud a little bit more of an interesting character, but I don't think he needed to be in all of the scenes. You could have definitely cut some of the scenes out, plus they make you fight him at the end of every game in the remake trilogy, which will make him way less menacing in the final game. You already beat him in the other two games, so what's there to worry about? A more obscure villain that I really like though is Dr. Otto Octavius from the Insomniac Spider-Man game. The reason why the entire game works so well is because Insomniac just really understands Spider-Man. They understood that everybody already knows who Spider-Man is, and that they didn't need to do another origin story. They could just use characters from the Spider-Man universe and write their own story around them. The same goes for Doc Ock. Everybody already knew from the beginning that he's gonna turn evil, so they subvert our expectations a little bit by making him a mentor figure for Peter. From the beginning it's foreshadowed that he's gonna turn evil, but from that point onwards they only show the relationship that Peter has with him for a while, and it shows us what's at stake here as soon as he turns evil. You can see the injustice when Norman Osborn takes away all of the equipment that he has. It makes you understand him better as a character, and when he does turn evil, then it's even more impactful as a result. Even though we knew from the beginning how he's going to turn out, and even though the final boss fight is a glorified QuickTime event, it's still really emotional, and the final scene still hits really hard.
No, you're wrong! You are everything I wanted to be! You just threw it away!
I'm not even sure if you could call Andrew Ryan a villain in the classical sense. He's not really an antagonist to the main character. He's more so just a person driven by false ideals. Before you meet him, everything you know about him comes from Atlas, somebody that you meet in the beginning of the game. When you encounter Andrew Ryan for the first and last time, he gives a speech about the phrase "would you kindly."
Stop. Would you kindly? Would you kindly? Powerful phrase. Familiar phrase.
Would you kindly? Would you kindly get this? Would you kindly find that? Would you kindly find that? Would you kindly find? Would you kindly get this? Would you kindly head to Ryan's office and kill the son of a bitch?
Sit. Would you kindly? Stand. Would you kindly? Run. Stop. Turn. A man chooses. A slave obeys.
And this is probably one of the best plot twists in any narrative. Just because the phrase "would you kindly" is just subtle enough that you don't really question it up to that very point. And it really turns the game on its head once it is revealed what it's all about. After this, Frank Fontaine, the true identity behind Atlas, becomes the main villain of the story, but I still think Andrew Ryan is more fitting of the villain role in that sense, because he's so much more relevant to the plot. Fontaine is really just there to be a twist villain and a final boss. this wouldn't be one of my videos without mentioning Persona at least once. So I want to talk about one of, if not the best villain in the entire Persona series, which is of course Dr. Maruki. This is a new character that was added into Persona 5 Royal, the enhanced re-release of the original, and he's the new school counselor. He's there to listen to everybody's problems and help them get through it, you know, counselor stuff. Throughout the entire game, tiny hints are dropped of what's to come, and it's foreshadowed just enough to maybe make you suspicious of him, but not really. Where the game would normally end after you defeat a god, don't question it, that's just regular Persona activities apparently. After that, suddenly the world around you begins to change and it's getting weird. People that should be dead suddenly come back to life, and you later find out that it's the doing of Dr. Maruki himself, who, with the power of his persona, can change reality and make it whatever a person desires. What I love about Maruki as a villain is that his intentions aren't really bad. He wants everybody's life to be as happy as it can be, and he wants to give everybody what they want. But if you talk to some of the NPCs, you realize that this is too big of an undertaking for just one man. By working through his palace, you also realize that he's not really driven by his sense of righteousness, but rather he's just processing his grief this way, and he's just coping with the loss of his fiancé or girlfriend. I'm not really sure, I kind of forgot. But still, that doesn't change the fact that he's one of the best boss fights and one of the best villains in the entire Persona series. I don't really think you can call this next person a villain, because we don't really know much about him yet. Yes, I'm sure a sequel will happen, this time for sure, trust me guys. I am referring to the G-Man from the Half-Life series. The G-Man is such a mysterious character. You don't even know what his plan is or what he even is. He speaks in this weird manner as if he's imitating the human language and not really speaking it. All you really find out about him is that he traps the main protagonist, Gordon Freeman, in some sort of stasis, and only really uses him as a pawn in a bigger plan. You don't see him lose control either, only once, in Half-Life 2 Episode 1. And even then, of course, he almost manages to course correct. All he really does is just give a few speeches at the beginning and end of the game, and sometimes in the middle as well. After that, he just watches Freeman do his thing. These speeches are really interesting though, and some of the most iconic pieces of text in all of gaming, really. Even if you've never played Half-Life 2, I'm sure you've heard the
right man in the wrong place can make all the difference in the world.
There are a lot of theories floating around to what he's actually doing, but nobody knows for certain. Again, we're gonna have to pray for another Half-Life entry to find that out. While doing some research for this, I found this video that really goes into detail on all of his appearances and also tries to explain what he's cooking. I can really recommend it, and if you're interested, I'll put the link in the description. I haven't played most of the Half-Life games apart from Half-Life Alyx and most of Half-Life 2, so I can't even come close to doing justice to the G-Man. Those would be some of my personal picks for the best villains in gaming, but of course, there are way more than I just mentioned, and I'd be glad if you could share your thoughts. Anyway, after all that, even though Akechi kind of backstabs you and tries to murder you, he's still the GOAT, deal with it.
It's not a game, I'm not a robot.